Sure, I'll talk for a little bit. Good evening, board members. There's a lot going on, and I want to thank everybody for being here on this special occasion, which will help us in the future as far as development goes. And as we know, development right now, we have Ashton Home Place, we have Sunset Ridge, and we have the Canyons, and then Stonehurst. Ashton Home Place, we just did a pre-final walkthrough this morning. Some minor things, they said they will have them all fixed today, so probably within the next week or so, we'll accept that subdivision. Once we get all the as-built plans, things of that nature, all the bonds and maintenance bonds and everything's in place, and we'll accept that subdivision, and when they start building homes over there pretty quick. And then Sunset Ridge off of Business 67, they're probably about 90% done with most of the infrastructure as far as the water, the sewer, and the storm drains. And then once the weather dries out a little bit, they'll start paving the streets over there, and they'll start moving along with that one. And as far as the canyon goes, they've been working on that. The deceleration lane from TxDOT is pretty much complete, and they've got a lot of their lots laid out. So things are looking really good. And then we're still working with Tractor Supply and All Subs and a couple other businesses coming into town. So thanks, everybody.
On that deceleration lane, they weren't required to make a cut in the divided highway?
In the center divider, I don't believe so, no. It's just turning off of Business 67.
Okay. All right. We have a new member to swear in. Have we heard from Gilbert Perez?
No, last I heard, he said he's leaving and he wouldn't be coming back.
Yeah, okay.
Didn't know if it was gonna be a year or 2 years or what.
All right. Well, we'll make that his position that's open at this time then.
Correct.
I'm not gonna ask Dan to step down since he made all the trouble to come here. So is that place 2 or?
I have no idea what it's called.
I think it would be probably place 2. If there needs to be any research on that. So whoever's in charge of swearing in the new members, if they'd like to take care of that.
Our mayor was gonna do that for us. Mayor Parrish is gonna swear in Troy Smith.
Mr. Smith? How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well.
All right, if you will raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Okay.
I state your name.
I, Troy Smith,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I have not directly or indirectly paid,
that I have not indirectly or directly paid,
offered, promised to pay, or contributed
offered, promised
to pay,
to pay,
contributed,
contributed,
or promised to contribute
or promised to contribute
any money or thing of value,
any money or thing of value,
or promised any public office
or promised any public office
or employment
or employment
for the giving or withholding of a vote
for the giving or withholding of a vote
at the election at which I was elected,
at the election in which I was elected,
or as a reward
or as a reward
to secure my appointment or confirmation,
to secure my appointment or confirmation,
whichever the case may be,
whichever the case may be.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Okay. If you'll date and sign there. Okay, and now for the oath of office. Again, raise your right hand.
Okay.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas,
In the name and the authority of the state of Texas,
I state your name,
I, Troy Smith,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of Planning and Zoning Commission member
of the Office of Planning and Zoning Commission member
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution, laws of the United States,
and of this state,
of this state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
All right. If you'll sign right here. that made a noise. All right, congratulations, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, Mr. Smith? Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right. Next item on our agenda is to request any citizens that have public comments to make may be recognized at this time. Okay. If there are none, then we can go on to item number 6, under general business. Consider approval of the Keene Planning and Zoning Commission minutes dated February 19th, 2024. They should be in your packet for a review. If someone would like to make a motion to either accept, table, or deny the minutes, would accept that at this time.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay. Is there a second? All right. Have a motion to accept the minutes as presented by Commission Member Chris Rhodes, with a second by Commission Member Troy Smith. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. All right. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
All right.
Right. There's a, no, that's somebody.
Next item on the agenda under general, number 6 would be the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, review of the land use assumptions and capital improvements plan led by Jacob and Martin Engineering Firm. Okay. City Manager Brent Batla, you'd like to speak to that?
Sure, I'll delay a little bit while we're waiting for Jacobs and Martin. I'll tell you a little bit of history on this item. Good evening, P&Z +3. So why is it P&Z +3? There's a very, very specific protocol that we have to follow as a city when we are looking at imposing impact fees. And the +3 is to make sure that we have enough of a percentage to include our business community, which includes builders, trade, such as electricians, stuff like that, real estate, etc. So it was very important that we had the P&Z and all 3. That way, when we look at impact fees, we've done it properly, and we can also impose them into our service areas that are outside of our city limits. Why impact fees? Why now? I am not an alarmist, but I'm ringing the alarm bell far enough in advance for us to avoid an iceberg, and that is a potential future sewer plant expansion, depending on growth rates within the next 10 years. And we can only do impact fees in a 10-year time frame, so this is we're getting as early of a start as we can towards this issue. As Don mentioned, we have a lot of developments that are on the books, and we get calls almost every day. And depending on how fast those grow out, depends on when we need to expand the sewer plant. Now, thankfully, that sewer plant was built with a lot of foresight. It was built to be able to be mirrored or doubled in size. So that saves quite a bit, a very efficient design for us. The unfortunate probability is that to do that, it's probably going to be around $20 million or so. So for us to avoid that iceberg and doubling everybody's rates or tripling them, 10 years down the road, we can position ourselves to help soften that blow with impact fees from different developments that come in. The ship has sailed on some of them that are already developing, but once we get these going forward, we can use that for those projects. I'll touch base a little bit on Section 1 Section 1.1, the general background. Basically, the impact fees govern how a municipality can create and maintain a utility impact fee. And to do this, we have to conduct an impact fee analysis, which you have in your packet, and we have to look at our land use assumptions, which is basically how we project our growth and usage as we build out. So if you look on page 7 of that first section, impact fees can be used to pay for construction contract price, surveying and engineering fees, land and easement acquisition cost, fees paid to the consultant for preparing and updating the capital improvements plan, which I'll touch base on that. The capital improvements plan, yes,
Do we have this on the PowerPoint?
we don't have
Oh, okay.
Jacobs and Martin may bring something, but. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I just, for the people in the audience, I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah. But we do have an up-to-date capital improvements plan, which is a major undertaking for this endeavor, so we're that much ahead of the ballgame with that. So we can also use the impact fees for projected interest charges and other finance costs for facility expansion identified in the capital improvements plan. So council had asked that we move forward in this endeavor, and I believe that was back in August. In September, we had some end-of-year funds. We were actually able to pay for this study in the previous fiscal year to help lessen that impact, because this is an expensive study to complete with the engineering firm. And so that allowed us to present this to you this evening. If you look at page 8, section 1.2, the maximum allowable water impact fee. And what I will need to do is turn this over to our engineering firm for some of the deeper questions on this, but their determination is $2,013 as the maximum allowable water impact fee, and that is based off of an equation of our estimated capital improvements cost and eligible cost to come up with a $2,013 water impact fee. If you look at page 9, this is a little bit more substantial, and this is kind of a reflection of that sewer plant future needs. The maximum allowable wastewater impact fee, $3,623. So when you add those together, that's, you know, over 5,600, 56. Let's see, you know, $5,600 in impact fees for water, wastewater. So we'll have to wait for Derek Engineering to discuss some of those equations, but any questions about that particular piece? That's just the first section. The land use assumptions are section 2, which we'll have him go over when he gets here. But
I may have missed this somewhere, but is that dollar, is it per, it's we said 5,700-ish per what?
per connection, per meter, so
Okay.
pretty significant.
Okay.
So they will have probably a graduated scale based on size, but I'll have to defer that to Derek.
Just to,
I'm
just,
sorry?
Per size of the water meter.
Yeah.
just to clarify, so that, because the water service accounts vary from the wastewater service accounts, not everyone living in the city of Keene will be served by the city of Keene, you know, municipal water. So that's the reason for the difference, I would assume.
Yes, correct. All right, and I'll just go over one more quick section on page 11, section 2.1, the purpose of the land use assumptions. to assist the city of Keene in determining the need and timing of capital improvements to serve future development. A reasonable estimation of future growth is required. For the purposes of determining an impact fee structure, growth and development projections were formulated based on assumptions pertaining to the type, location, quantity, and timing of various future land uses in the community. So, again, you have the impact fee analysis that we have to go through, and you have the land use assumptions. Again, what we feel the demand is going to be based on various, their build-out scenario. So with that, I will have to wait for Derek to, to get here. Any questions I can try to answer?
The cost goes back to the citizen,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And is that just imposed, or at the end of the 10 years, do they go, well, we didn't do what we assumed? And so that cost would reduce?
So at 10 years, well, I think we have to do a revision every 5. It can be for a 10-year plan, but every 5 years you have to go back and revise it and make sure your assumptions were correct. You know, we could, you know, I heard you talking about interest rates. You know, we're kind of guessing how quickly these are going to build out with interest rates. And so that's why we have to come back in every 5 years and see how close we were and readjust from there. Okay. All right.
While we're killing time, did you hear the one about the, no, I'm just kidding. You know, these impact fees, we're one of the last few cities around here that does not have impact fees. So that's why we've seen a pretty big growth spurt over the last couple of years, because they said, oh, Keene doesn't have impact fees yet. Let's get in there. And some did, and that's fine. But we're to that point where we need to, like you said, especially with the wastewater treatment plant. Water-wise, we're probably okay. It all depends on Johnson County Special Utility District. Because right now we can get up to 1 million gallons a day from them. We're only getting about 3 million to 5 million gallons a month from them, but our contract says we could get 1 million gallons a day from them, plus what we produce with our wells. So we could always renegotiate that contract as long as they can supply us with that extra water if we need it. Now, wastewater treatment, on the other hand, is a different story. That's something that we've always had for ourselves and are just maintaining. So if a home builder comes in, they want to build a development, you know, right now we have the water connection fee, the sewer connection fee, the tap fee, and that kind of takes care of our current costs right now, what it costs us, plus a little bit to help work the system as it works and the daily operations of it. So the impact fees are only for future growth or future expansion of things of that nature. Our current sales and stuff are supposed to help maintain our current system. But to grow the system, that's where the, excuse me, the impact fees come in. So a builder might say, all right, you got 10 houses, or one house, it might be $5,000 in impact fees, plus what we already charge for your tap fees. Now, we also can do a street impact fee, and we can also do a storm drains fee as well. And some cities do that, which helps maintain those over the years, or helps with thoroughfares connecting. We all know we have some less than great streets in this town, mainly because we didn't have the sales tax revenue other than what our citizens pay in ad valorem taxes. So this is gonna help us get to that point. We now have the rooftops coming in. It may still take another 5, 6, 7, 8 years before we get those rooftops that have been promised in place. But once they do, and we've already got the Tractor Supplies, and I've had other retail establishments saying, oh, I heard you getting this, I heard you getting that, I heard you got more rooftops. So we're starting to get daily phone calls now about people that are interested in bringing business to Keene. So.
Now, these impact fees, they affect anybody that's applying for a new building permit,
Correct.
whether it's, like
Whether
existing?
it's one house or a whole development, or it's a apartment complex or a retail business.
Okay.
It's a new development.
So I'll share a little bit of news since we're killing a little bit of time here. So obviously our impact fees, when we look at them, something we need to take into consideration is offsetting our future needs, but we also have to be competitive. We can't kill growth, just because, very exorbitant impact fees. So I'll give you an example of what I think may be some good news for Keene. JSUD just finished their impact fee study, and for a 2-inch water line, their impact fee is $183,000, over $183,000. So what that means for Joshua and several areas of Alvarado that they serve, if a fast food restaurant wants to go in there, it's $183,000. It's going to kill growth for them. So they are really, really struggling with that. There's an issue with that. So the silver liner for Keene is that we have predominantly our own wastewater system that will make us much more competitive for those commercial buildings than a $183,000 tap fee for a 2-inch water line. So I think that's some really good news for Keene. So.
All right, thank you.
I stalled as long as I could.
We're on page 11.
I'm very sorry for keeping you guys waiting. No excuse, just mess up on my part. But not sure what's already been discussed, if anything, but
Like I said, we're on page 11, if you'd like to take it from there or go back.
Yeah, basically, we just went over just kind of a little bit of the background of the impact fee analysis, and we didn't touch anything yet on land use assumptions.
okay,
So, again, just like where we are in the process, how we got here,
right.
and had maybe some questions about water, wastewater, how you came up with those numbers. And
Absolutely.
then we haven't touched land use assumptions.
Okay. I will, I may back up slightly, but let me first kind of,
Can we get your name again?
I'm very sorry, Derek Turner. I'm with Jacob and Martin Engineers. We prepared the study for the impact fee analysis.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Don. So for a city to create impact fees or to change or establish impact fees, there are a few steps you have to go through, which you may or may not have kind of covered generally already, but the first of those is you have to review and update your land use assumptions. Land use assumptions tell you where growth is likely to occur and what that growth is going to look like. And that's substantially used to determine how many future connections you may have that go into the calculation for the impact fee that I'll kind of talk about shortly. And so that was the first thing you do. We took your existing land use map, which is in the report. We modified it for some things that have happened recently that we know have occurred, some annexation and some developments that have occurred. And then we kind of projected out from there. You'll see on your map in your report, which is in the appendix of your report, that they don't look a lot different. You'll see there's some places, as I said, where we added some developments, some residential developments substantially, maybe one or two commercial areas that have already taken place. And then a lot of the other area within the ETJ that's shown as future development essentially. A lot of that area won't have changed a whole lot. And what we've done for the purposes of the impact fee is we go in and we project, based on the area that you have available, what that's likely to look like in regards to number of units or number of lots in commercial development. And so that's how we come up with the number that we use to develop the impact fee.
I meant to ask, Mr. Turner, we don't have a PowerPoint available for this?
I'm sorry, that was something that that I left behind to try to get here when I did.
That's right, we all have copies, but
Yeah,
for the
and
citizen.
I'm following along on a copy I have. So if you look at that, toward the back of that report, even better. You'll see you'll see the existing land use and then the proposed land use. Do they have the maps that we're on? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Again, I'm sorry, this is not ideal, but so the maps that I'm looking at will look like this.
Page 53 in our
Yeah.
handout.
Should be the very last page, I believe. This is your existing land use map, not the last, but the second to last, map in your handout. And the future land use map, which is the next map after that, let's see, I'll take that back, I'm sorry. Misdirecting you. This will be, what I'm about to show you or talk about will be Appendix C, I believe. Yes, Appendix C, that's the future land use map. And again, you'll see the shaded areas that just show what the development has looked like, commercial, residential, that type of thing. And then the future just has the areas that have developed since that existing land use map was done. And then a few areas along the highway corridor that show some expected future development. And again, that you should see some light blue shaded. It's a large area for your ETJ. That shows basically what you would consider the developable area for the city within that ETJ. And that's where we make the projections based on what these recent land use changes have been for you, and projecting that out over your ETJ to get a proposed number. And one thing I didn't mention is that an impact fee study is based on a 10-year planning period. So we're not going out to the full build out of the city 20, 30, 40 years from now. This has to be based on the more recent time frame of 10 years. And so based on that land use, and again, that really gives us, that big shaded light blue area gives us a land mass, an area in acres of developable area. And that's the area that we use based on your population projections or your percent growth projection to determine how many units we will use to divide into the capital improvements to get that impact fee. And so if you look at the kind of the next item involved in an impact fee determination, you've got your land use assumptions, then you've got your capital improvements, and that's really the meat of it. That's where the number really comes from more than anything else. And those are these larger sheets with the large tables. There's one for water and one for sewer. And I believe they're front and back. And so you'll see on the water, there's a whole list of items here for different capital improvements. You've got some pump rehabs, well 11 site, the well 7 pump station site. A couple of other things that are plant related, but substantially all of these are upgrades to your water lines, to your distribution system, especially older lines that you guys have that were identified in the capital improvement plan that was done a few years ago. This is very similar to that plan. I think it's about 3 years old. It's 21, I believe. And so we've updated a little bit. Some things have been done that were on that plan that we've taken off. I think we added a couple of items, but substantially this is line replacement. And so you'll see where it says existing diameter and new diameter, the first two columns to the right of the description, it'll show you that there's some 2-inch line that we're proposing to be upsized to 6-inch. There are lines that are 6 that are being replaced with 6. Those are old cast iron lines or asbestos cement lines. And so the bulk of the capital improvement plan is line replacements on your water. And you'll see there's an estimated cost that was put together for each one of those items. And that total estimated cost, a few columns over. And then this percent utilization is kind of where you get into the determination of the impact fee or what you get for that. And you'll see that percent utilization basically is an estimate that we've made that determines today what the estimated use of that facility is. So if it's a distribution line that's in an area where there's some property that hasn't been developed, then that percent utilization may be lower. If it's a water line in an area where where it's fully developed and there's no room for additional expansion, then that would be a high utilization in the current time. And then we look at the end of the planning period with 2034 in this case, the 10-year period, and we look at what projected development would be for those same areas. And if they're in an area where you had a low percent development on the existing side, but we have a high projected development on the proposed side, then the difference in that is the percent utilization that you can use to determine your impact fee. Does that make sense? Might want to stop there. So basically, you just subtract the two, the future percent utilization in the 10-year period minus what the current is, and get a percent utilization that you apply to the capital improvement cost, which is that total estimated cost for each item. And then the result, that percent of that cost, is the impact fee eligible. That's the dollar amount that you can actually use to calculate your impact fee off of, at least for the start.
Why
Yes, sir.
are we so comfortable with just a 6-inch line?
Well, I mean, in a lot of these areas where you've got a 6-inch line in a developed area, for instance, if we want to use that case as an example, a 6-inch is already, hydraulically, it's fine for what it's serving. A 6-inch line there in the future, because it's already highly utilized, it wouldn't make sense to put in a bigger line from a dollar standpoint. Some of these you'll see may be upsizes. A lot of them are. We're going from a 2 to a 6. And so a lot of areas where you're just serving, I'm thinking of maybe the southwest part of town, there's an area there where you've got a 2-inch line that extends out, and there's some potential for growth in that area. So the 2-inch line there would not be sufficient to serve that future growth, so we go to a 6. And in a distribution system, especially with loop lines like a city generally has, a 6-inch line will serve a lot. Some of these are 8, some are larger, but that's why if we're going from a 6 to a 6, that's generally in a location where there's already a pretty high utilization and we're not increasing it that much.
Okay.
So for your water, if you just track all that down to the bottom of the second page of that water table, you'll see that you've got a total impact fee eligible amount of $2.58 million. And there's an additional calculation that has to be done before you actually get to the point of using that number. But for the capital improvements that are actually eligible to be used for that determination, it's $2.58 million on the water. And then if you look at the sewer, which is the next section, the same table for the next section, similar table, front and back, you've got a similar breakdown. And again, the sewer is substantially, as far as the number of items here, related to line work. You've got a lot of sewer lines that are old clay lines and different things. Yes, sir.
This does not include a sewer plant expansion, right? Just some of the infrastructure up to that.
It has some basically control improved. It's not a full plant. And that's based on the projections we made for the capacity of the plant. We've talked about that in the past, and it's contained in that capital improvement plan, but the projections would show that you have available capacity out through that planning period, right, with some minor modification. It includes a lift station, a new lift station. It includes some control systems, some upgrades to a lift station. And other than that, it's pretty substantially line work. You'll see that there are a lot of 6-inch lines listed for your sewer. 6-inch line is typically considered small for a sewer main line. So contrary to the water, where you see a 6-inch line on the existing, we're generally showing a replacement of that to go up to an 8-inch. And that's generally what you would see on a sewer system, a minimum size of 8 inches on a sewer line, unless you've got a very small service area, a few houses, less than maybe 10 houses, or something like that. But anyway,
Could you, at some point, explain what makes it impact fee eligible?
yes. So the eligibility of the fee, the amount, is based on the percent utilization. So if you, and I'll go through this one again on the wastewater like we did on the water, but, so you come to a total cost, right, for each item. You see on the, it'd be the 6th column over to the right of the description of the project location area column. There's a total estimated cost for each item. Well, we can only apply for the purposes of an impact fee calculation by code, by Texas Municipal Code. You can only include the portion of that total cost that is attributed to proposed development or proposed units. You can't use existing services to calculate that fee. So that's why we have to do the percent utilization. We have to determine how much is currently being utilized versus how much can potentially be utilized in the 10-year planning period. Take the difference of those, and that percentage is what you can apply to that total cost to make it impact fee eligible. Did that help clarify that? Okay.
Okay.
And so you see you've got numbers, and in some places you'll see where you've got, as I said, you may have an area where it's completely developed. You've got a neighborhood that's got houses, there's no room for development. It's 100% current percent utilization. And then you'll see on the 10-year projected, that hasn't changed. It's still 100% utilized. So your percent eligible is 0 because you're not adding any new development to that. Impact fees can only be imposed on new development. And so that's why we have to determine what that number is. And so you look at that final column, impact fee eligible, again, just like we did for the water, and come down to the bottom line, and you'll see that it's 6.595 million total impact fee eligible cost. And so, I'm happy to go back or stop. I know I started out wrong today, so if I lose you, just let me know and we'll back up. But so using that impact fee eligible cost, and we'll go back to the water now. There's a calculation that the law allows you to make, and so that calculation requires that you take that impact fee eligible amount, the eligible amount, and then you can only take 50% of that to actually use for your impact fee. So you're taking the eligible amount that we applied a percentage to get to, and then we're applying 50% to that to actually determine the number you can use. Does that make sense? It's kind of convoluted in a way. I mean, it's a simple calculation, but it's not real clear why the legislation requires you do it that way. But it's 50%, and it really has to do with being able to project accurately what that growth is going to be. But if you look at the maximum allowable water impact fee, and that's page 8, and we're backing up. It's shown in 2 different places. In fact, let me go to the. This would be page 29, if you want to look at that page. So we kind of summarized what we've been through here. You had a total water capital improvement cost, which was about 8.7 million. And then right below that, we reiterated the total eligible water costs of 2.58. That's based on that percent utilization. And then the number right below that is the regulatory requirement of 50% of that number, which brings you down to 1.29 million. Everybody see that? And then we take the number of units that we have determined are projected on the water side for the city based on those land use assumptions, which was 641 water service accounts. And by the way, those projections are made again. There are several different things you look at when we're making these projections. The state has population projections. We've made projections in the past. You've had other studies done that have projections. And we kind of look at those and we evaluate and see, what makes the most sense. The state, for instance, has a very low projection. So we generally don't use that, at least not on the surface. But we come up with a percent growth over that 10-year period based on what we believe should happen. And a lot of it, in your case, is based on what recent history would show development has done and what recent history has shown development has done for communities around you. And so, but based on all that, we came up with 641 connections. And essentially what you do is simply take that water impact fee credit, eligible cost of 1.29 million, and divide it by the projected number of connections, 641 in this case. And so if you do that, you come up with a maximum water impact fee amount that you could charge of $2,013. And so that's the maximum. It can be that or less. Yes, sir.
But maybe, this is gonna come up, is that competitive with other communities?
It will, I will get to that shortly. And that's, so, because that's kind of where we wind up with all of this. So, but that's what the calculation shows. You know, there's a little bit of, it's a little bit subjective in some places. The cost is based on some pretty, detailed estimates. So that's something that you would expect to see, regardless of who was doing the estimate. The projections are a little more subjective, but we've got historical data to use to come to that. And then you've got the percent that's allowable, the utilization, and probably the most subjective part of it is that percent utilization, where we determine what we think the current utilization is and what we think the proposed will be. Especially in areas that are relatively undeveloped, that gets to be a little bit subjective, but there's some kind of criteria you go by. I mean, again, based on what the zoning would be in that area and how many units you would expect in a typical residential development, some of those kinds of things. But anyway, so for the water, that was the calculation. If you go to the following page and look at the wastewater, same general calculation. Again, we had the numbers we looked at before. You had a total capital improvement cost of $29 million. You had a percent utilization eligible of 6.59, and then the 50% credit that you can use on that was 3.29 million. For the sewer, because your water and sewer is broken up differently, you've got Johnson County providing water service in some areas. We had a higher wastewater service projected amount of 910 service accounts. And so you take the eligible 3.3 roughly million, divide by the 910, and you come up with $3,623 of maximum impact fee that can be charged on the wastewater side.
910, that just sounds like what we have on the books currently.
And that's additional. That's 910 additional. That's what we projected. And so over the 10-year period, we're projecting that you're going to see a pretty substantial growth.
I mean, does this not take into account the canyons, Ashton Place 1 or 2, or Stone Ridge, or Sunset Ridge or
This
Stone
would not take into account any that are already approved.
in development?
Right.
Oh, okay,
Yes, sir.
all right. So are they?
So these would be new.
Are they exempt then from the impact
Well,
fees?
I think so, yes. I mean, that's kind of that's a legal question, but if they were already approved and underway before the impact fee was put in place,
Yeah.
I think that excludes them.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of developer agreements that don't include those, so.
Right. So,
Is that correct, Mr. Fanning? Okay. Right, okay. Oh, okay, so I was just curious about the 910, that's over and above what we're already working with, yeah.
that's correct.
Okay,
That's our projection. And so if you want to go back, so that kind of leads you to the next discussion, which is what Brent brought up. And this is going to start on page 63. This is a comparison of other communities of similar size, similar region as Keene. It's hard to find a great number of communities that fit that mold exactly, but we've tried to find some that are similar, and also ones that actually have impact fees that we can use for comparison. But if you look at these charts, and this is what I'm looking at right now, on the water side, and they're broken out by meter size. So generally, your impact fee is going to be charged on a base of a 5/8 to 3/4 inch meter, and then it's gonna multiply from there on a 1 inch, 1.5, 2, 3, and so on size meter. And so the green, you can see where Keene is, it's the green column in the middle of all this. So the impact fees that are proposed with this report, and that's the maximum fee, puts Keene at about generally middle to low middle of all of these communities that were looked at. And so I use that because that's a pretty good visual, kind of tells you where you're at. Some of these are quite a bit higher. And then if you look up, the further up you go in meter size, the lower that goes for the city of Keene as far as the comparison to others. And you'll see on the 6 inch, you're actually the very lowest one. Let me just say too that there's kind of a standard, the American Water Works Association has a standard chart for meter sizes that tells you what the equivalent number of meters is for each of these sizes going up to 6. So if you've got a 1 inch meter, that's like 3 times in equivalent meters of a 3/4. So you would multiply that impact fee by 3. And a 4 inch might be, it's in the neighborhood of 20 times. So you multiply that fee by 20, and that gives you your impact fee for a 4 inch meter. So that's how we determine that. But if you look at it, again, as you go through, you're kind of middle to low middle and on down to being lower than most of the other communities we surveyed, if you charge the maximum fee that we looked at for the report, or that's recommended through the report. And that's broken out in tabular form too, if you want to look at that, but it's the same information. And then on the wastewater side, you actually fall on the high end, or at least high middle, if not high end, all the way through. And so, it's just everybody's got a different set of circumstances as far as what kind of improvements are needed. Somebody might have a major plan improvement or something like that, or not. And you guys have a lot of line work. Sewer was identified in your capital improvement plan as a kind of a major issue as far as the lines that you have in place now. And so there were some other items, as we said, but mainly line work and a lot of it. And so that impact fee tends to be a little higher. Your projected number of connections could be less than some of these other communities, but generally speaking, you can see you're on the high side of middle, if not closer to high on all of these. And it kind of carries all the way through on this one as far as meter size. Again, you drop a little bit on the 6 inch, but generally speaking, you're on the high side. And so Keene, for whatever reason, the graphics got suppressed when we printed it. We'll clean that up on the final draft, but you can see where Keene is on the chart. It just falls between those two. And so going back a little bit, so typically what has to happen is you as a board have to make a favorable recommendation to council on this. Council then has to hold a public hearing and approve that, and before the impact fees can go in place. And so that's the process we're in. We're at the stage now where the land use assumptions, capital improvements, and impact fee have to be evaluated by the committee and recommended to council. I think that's kind of the gist of it.
So I had some questions.
Yes, sir.
It might actually be one massive question, but I'm really kind of interested in trying to understand the relationship between growth and commercial and residential. And when I see cities on these graphs that I think we should aspire to be like, Lido and Willow Park, but they have vastly, dramatically different demographics than we do, and locations than we do. How is having a comparable fee to high-income cities with different, that are expanding rapidly as well, going to affect our growth? And then what's the relationship between commercial and residential? Because I'd make the assumption that the builders are just going to pass the fee on to the housing cost. Whereas the commercial, it's a bit harder to do. You don't just raise your prices, a few pennies for 10 years. So this is kind of my questions, or statements, questions,
Okay.
just things I'm wondering.
Let me see if I can put those in in a form I can
Yeah.
understand, but, so the first question was, how do you compare with, as far
Yeah,
as
so
growth
how
with
does it
other
affect our
communities?
growth being, with our fees being as high as something like Alito or Willow Park?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're Keene. I would love to be someday like Alito and Willow
Mm-hmm.
Park.
Well, I would say, first of all, that again, you know, it's a pretty, I said it was really subjective, but I mean, there are specific criteria you follow to get to that fee. It has a lot to do with that growth projection. And so, you know, some of these may not have, you may think they have a high growth projection, but when you start thinking about that percent utilization, they may not have that high of a growth projection that's eligible to be used. And so, and yet their dollar amount may be, you know,
Right.
comparable, or they may have a higher growth that puts, that they have more to calculate into that fee with less of a capital improvement dollar that puts you closer to the top. So it's a little hard to use it in that way. I would say some of these, like Alito's a bedroom community. Alito has some commercial potential too, but they're big-time residential
Right.
forecast.
Yep.
And so that's not a bad comparison.
Yep.
And if you're not as high as them, that's a favorable thing for Keene. But, and some of it, again, has to do with where you're at, like you said. I mean, where Keene is, you've got the highway corridor where there's gonna be some commercial growth, and we've shown that in the land use assumptions. But out and around, you would expect that to be, you know, residential. Either large lot or even smaller lot residential, but residential, as opposed to commercial. So it really is a factor of where you're at, and then, you know, what your projecting is to compare to some of these other communities.
That makes
That answer your
sense.
question?
Yeah, I was just more knowledge on my part. And then, is it correct to assume that the builders will pass on these fees? and the
Yes, I
housing
mean,
Cost increase?
yeah, you would assume so, that's what we see, I mean, it would make sense, but, and even on the commercial side, I mean, on a high-end commercial, you know, their fees are generally gonna be higher just because they're larger meters.
Right.
A lot of the time, but, you know, they get their money through, you know, through the sale and disposition of their property, but yeah, you're right.
I have a question for you.
Sir?
Why is there a difference in the water impact fee number, meaning the 641, versus the wastewater, which is 271 more? Why would
So-
those not be the same?
Well, because a lot of the area that Keene has potential to grow in has water serviced by another entity. So Johnson County serves a lot of that area, whereas they don't serve sewer necessarily.
Gotcha.
So Keene can pick up the sewer, but not the water.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, again, and if there are more questions, I'll be here as long as you need me to. I'm very, very sorry that I held you up. Hopefully, this all made sense and got through it in a reasonable manner for you, but I'm here if you need me.
I'll ask another one real quick.
Sir.
So from what I'm understanding, and I tried to pre-read this before we even got here, just so that way I had more knowledge about what you're talking about. So if I bought an acre of property, and I wanted to just put a single house on, I would have to pay the impact fee for that one single-use family. But then a developer can buy 35 acres, and he has to pay an impact fee for each lot that will consist in there. So that he won't even know those impact fees until the preliminary plat gets approved to know how many lots are being done in there. Am I on the same page as that?
Generally, I mean, you know, they're gonna do their homework, and they're gonna put together conceptual plans that tell them how many lots they think they're gonna have, and they'll have a pretty good idea, but yes.
Okay, but that's essentially the process. So
Right.
I would do it for my own single family, he would do it for the entire subdivision.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just noticed that, for whatever it's worth, the total water and wastewater impact fees listed for the city of Keene, under the 5/8 to 3/4, total 5541.81, when you add the two separately, and you come out with 5634 and something change. Is that just an accounting error, or?
And maybe, let me look and see, so,
And that may be the only one. I haven't gone through all of them.
if you can bear with me, I'll verify. But
Just taking the data from page 65 and page 68, and
So I get 5634 is what they total.
it just shows 5541 combined.
Yeah, 5636 is what it should be, and that's what yeah, that's a calculation error in that cell of that spreadsheet. We'll
Okay.
correct that.
That's fine. All right, thank you.
And this is a draft, so we can certainly, recommended changes can be made, things like that, obviously, we're gonna correct, but we'll, we can take any input and move forward with it in that way.
All right, and we're just reviewing it, so is there anything else that we need to do at this point?
I don't think so. As far as the process goes, this committee has done the required review.
Yeah, I think, I'm reasonably certain that the committee will have to make a recommendation to council, either to move forward with it or not, and so, or at least not recommended, but, so a recommendation will have to go to council one way or the other.
So we put this on the next P&Z. This would be the P&Z plus 3.
The committee.
Okay.
Is there a reason why we can't make a motion tonight, or is this only a review?
It says review, land use assumption and capital improvements plan.
So, yeah, we'll have to take action next.
Okay.
And if it helps, if you're gonna have time to absorb this, obviously, I can come back when that action is on the table and then answer any further questions at that time, too.
Well, I imagine,
What's that? Oh, good, okay, yeah,
Okay.
so discuss, consider, and take action. So we're good.
oh, okay.
Got a lot to take action.
Does anybody have any more questions for?
I know there's a lot thrown at you, but one thing to consider on taking action tonight is it is difficult to get all, everybody together for this. We do have to have everybody before this. So something to consider, whether you table it or reschedule it or take action tonight.
Well, I'm gonna ask a question. After this, the next step is to bring it to a council. Let's say we vote on this tonight and we approve it. It has to go to council, be approved there, then it's enacted? Okay, so there's more to be done, and I'm not trying to speed up the process because of time, but I'm just thinking of the urgency of getting it done at the same time. So I'm just trying to wrap my mind around the process and how long it will take if we just keep delaying, but if everybody feels good about making a decision tonight, I think we should wrap it up.
If you make a decision tonight and there are errors on here, then those would be corrected in
The-
the final draft?
Yes, yes. Yeah, this is not the final draft, but even before, we'll correct the things we know about and,
And there's a decision made tonight.
right.
Well, if everybody feels good, I'll make a motion to accept and recommend.
You want to make a motion to accept the 2024 water and wastewater impact fee study as prepared by Jacob and Martin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's a second? Okay. So at this time, we have a motion before the Advisory Committee, and I assume I'm in charge. I don't know how all that comes together, but anyway, to approve and to recommend to the City Council of Keene acceptance of this 2024 water and wastewater impact fee study draft. And there's a second, the motion made by Chris Rhodes, a second, seconded by Troy Smith. If there's any discussion, we can entertain a vote at this time. Those in favor? Well, you're,
The entire committee? Yeah. Oh.
so, okay, did we get a count?
We can note it if needed. Just for the record, who all was in favor? Again? Anybody? Mr. Fanning? No.
I wasn't a sworn in member, so I didn't know if we needed to vote.
No.
I have one quick question before we go further.
Sure.
In all due respect. How did what are the tap fees look like? Are they changing any at all? Because
Right
that's
now,
something we
they're
haven't taken
not.
into consideration in comparison to the study that I looked at, is what the other city tap fees look like in comparison to what Keene looks like, and we have impact fees. So there's actually other fees involved when you do this, and so I just knew those weren't taken into consideration in the study, and I didn't know how they worked.
The whole impact fee study.
Well, the tap fees are a different thing that are determined based on other things. They'd be two completely separate charges.
And the reason I ask that question is because obviously those are set fees that have an impact on your development.
Correct.
So in that case, how do we look in comparison, we in the city, look in comparison to our tap fees and other folks? And would it have any kind of major relevance in making that decision as far as the developer coming in and looking at those costs? I realize the big costs are the impact fees.
Right.
So I can say next fiscal year, we are going to kind of do a fee analysis and look at all of our fees for our different services and make sure we're highly competitive. Sure.
And I feel like you are at this time. I mean, that was just something I had a general question about. When you look at that development compared to the developers, those are things they look at. So are those being looked at?
Yeah, we just raised our impact fees, not impact, our tap fees, thank you, last year, mainly because the price of everything tripled,
Sure.
after COVID. And we were actually losing money on the majority of our taps. So now I'd say we're probably, again, in that kind of maybe middle high area compared to everybody else around us.
Thank you.
Okay, so this vote includes all 8 of us? Is everybody aware of that? And did we get a count, or, okay, any opposed? Okay, any abstain? What was our count? All right, thank you.
Thank you all for understanding.
All right, there's no need for executive session tonight. Any requests for future agenda items from any of the members? P&Z members? I assume? No? Okay. Well, at this time, time is 7:14 p.m. We'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you, everybody.